Hi guys, it's me, Mr. Bertoch, your incredibly handsome science teacher. In this video, we're going to talk about animal cells. Well, hello. Guess what? You are alive. I know that is shocking and surprising, but it is also a fact. Probably. You're probably alive if you're watching this video. You might be like the skeleton in the background. He seems to be watching me as well with his sunglasses on, and he is not alive, but I am suspecting you are alive. And if you are alive, like all living things, you are made of these tiny little microscopic units of life that are called cells. Because as it turns out, all living things are made of cells. Now, we have not looked at every living thing under a microscope. Chances are you have not been looked at under a microscope. But every sample that any scientist has ever taken in the history of science and looked at under a microscope, it was made of cells. So we can infer that it is almost certain that every living thing on the earth, because every time we look, sure enough, it's made of cells. Every living thing is made up of cells. And that is part of one of the three parts of the cell theory. The other two parts are, so all living things are made of cells. Cells are the basic unit of life, and cells come from other cells. The cell theory is very important to science. Okay, so memorize it, put it into your brain permanently. The cell theory, all living things are made of cells. Cells are the basic unit of life, and cells come from other cells. So if I take you and I throw you into the air, and being the nice science teacher that I am, I take out my samurai sword and I cut you in half as you're in air. I fruit ninja you, and the two pieces fall onto the table. Are the cells, are the pieces of your body dead because I have chopped you in half? The answer is no. Okay, you might die quickly, but your cells will remain living. And if I take those pieces and I throw them up in the air and I cut them in half, now there are four pieces of you, but still all of the cells are pretty much alive. And then I could take you and lay you on the table and chop you up. Okay, now that's quite gruesome, but maybe I should have started with a watermelon instead of a person. Probably would have been a better example anyway. But the cells remain alive even though the thing itself might be dead for at least a little while, because cells are living entities in their own right. You are made up of little tiny living creatures. Your cells have their own life that is separate from your life. So when you bleed, your blood is made up of lots of little tiny cells, and those cells are alive outside your body, separate from you. And they go on living, at least for a little while, until they eventually starve to death or run out of oxygen or whatever. Okay? So you are a living being, and you are made up of lots of other living creatures, lots of smaller, tiny living creatures called cells, living Legos, living bricks called cells. And later in another video, we're going to talk about how cells combine to form tissues and organs and organ systems and organisms and so on, and all kinds of ways that they're organized in nature. But in this video, we're going to just talk about cells, and in particular animal cells, because animal cells and bacteria cells and fungi cells and plant cells are all a little bit different. So we're going to talk about animal cells in this video. And we're going to talk about some of the parts of an animal cell. So first of all, the outside of an animal cell. What is, like skin to the cell. So just like you have skin around your body that keeps your guts in, skin, it keeps your guts in. That is a poem. So too do cells have a sort of like a skin to keep their contents safe on the inside and protect them. And that skin is called the cell membrane. Okay, the cell membrane is a layer. I'm not going to go into too much of the biology of what it is made up of right now. We'll save that for a later video when we talk about osmosis. But the cell is, or rather the membrane, the cellular membrane is a layer like a skin that surrounds the outside of the cell. Inside of that cell membrane is a jelly-like substance that is called cytoplasm. Okay, and cytoplasm is the goo or the jelly that all of the rest of the cell is floating in. So inside of a cell, just like you have organs, you have a heart and lungs and kidneys and liver and all these different organs that are doing different jobs right now. So too do your cells have little tiny organs, and we call them organelles. Organelle just means tiny organ, and these organelles are right now busy working, doing jobs, doing a lot of different things, and the organelles are all floating in cytoplasm inside of your cells. So take a second here and imagine how complex you are. Okay, you are sitting there and you are made up of 100 trillion cells, and every single one of those cells is alive. And inside of single one of those cells are these little tiny organelles that are moving and functioning and doing different jobs right now. Trillions of tiny little organelles. You are so amazing. You are so incredibly complex. It's just mind-blowing how complex living things are. Okay, let's talk about some of the organelles. So let's start with the nucleus. The nucleus is at the center of the cell. It is like the brain of the cell. Cells don't really think, but it is kind of like the brain of the cell. It's the control center. It's the ruler or the lawgiver of the cell. Okay, the nucleus controls everything else that happens inside the cell. Outside of the nucleus, between the nucleus and the cellular membrane, floating in cytoplasm are all of the other organelles. One of those is called the mighty mitochondria. Not really called mighty, but I call it that, and I will say mighty every single time because I've said it that way for like 20 years and I can't change it now. The mighty mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And the reason that I call it the mighty mitochondria is because then you will never forget what its job is. Okay. The mighty mitochondria produces the energy for the cell, and that energy is called ATP, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Okay. So when you forget what is the job of the mighty mitochondria, just remember, okay, it is mighty. It is powerful. Mighty, right? Mighty means powerful. It is powerful. It is the powerhouse of the cell. It uses a fuel source that is called sugar, and it makes energy. And using that sugar, it basically essentially burns the sugar and it creates energy for your cell. So right now in your body, you have lots of mighty mitochondria that are doing this work, that are making power, literally, in some cases, electricity, because your nervous system, your brain and your spine and all your nerves actually run on electricity, and that is produced in the mighty mitochondria in your cell. All of your cells need to have mighty mitochondria. Okay. And then there's the endoplasmic reticulum, which is often called the ER, not the emergency room, but the endoplasmic reticulum. And it is like the highway of the cell. It is this thing that not spirals, but goes all over the place, back and forth. and it moves things around the cell. The endoplasmic reticulum is like the highway or transportation system of the cell. Let's talk about what haven't I talked about yet? I should have made myself a list. Let's talk about vacuoles. Vacuoles are little bags, little sacs where the cell stores stuff. It puts its things like water and food and car keys and pictures of its wife and waste products and things like that into the vacuoles. Probably not really the car keys or the pictures of its wife, but the vacuole is where the cell stores stuff. It stores whatever it needs to store. And I remember vacuole because it rhymes with saccule. Vacuoles are the saccules, not really called saccules, but it rhymes, where the cells store their stuff and things. Ribosomes. Ribosomes are really tiny little organelles, are really, really small compared to the other organelles, and they are where your cells make proteins. We're not going to talk in this video about what proteins are. We will talk in another video about proteins. They're really important. Proteins are super cool, by the way. They're these little tiny machines that actually move and actually like little tractors or robots that are programmed by your cells and actually do jobs. And the ribosomes make them. And then the Golgi apparatus is where the proteins are finished. They're folded up and made into the shape they're supposed to be and released out into the cell. So you need to know what is the cell membrane, cytoplasm, the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi apparatus, the ribosomes, and the vacuoles. Later in the next video, we're going to talk about plant cells, and we will learn a few more types of organelles that are only found, and structures that are only found inside of plant cells. Okay, but important thing is that cells are the little tiny thing, living bricks that all living things are made out of. That is part of the cell theory. Again, what are the three parts of the cell theory? Cells are the basic unit of life. All living things are made of cells. Cells come from other cells. So I can't make cells. I can't go into a laboratory and make a living cell. It's not possible. No scientist can do that. It's never been done. Okay, cells come from other cells. Cells reproduce, and that is how we get new cells. And the cells that came before them came from cells, and the cells that came before them came from cells. And you're saying to yourself, but Mr. Bertoch, where did the first cells come from? And the answer is from the cells before them. And then you're like, but no, I'm talking about the very first. I'm like, oh, the very first ones? Oh, yeah. Those came from the ones before them. Okay, that's all I can tell you. That's the scientific answer. We don't really know how cells began. So there. Hi guys, thanks for watching my video. These rambling science videos where I go unscripted and just kind of barf up all the science knowledge out of my head are part of a series that go along with an online class that I teach, which you can sign up for if you go to handsomescienceteacher.com. I also have a whole bunch of free resources for homeschoolers. I have hundreds of articles on every topic that covers your entire science curriculum from 5th through 8th grade. I have online games and quizzes, all curated and written by this handsome guy, a science teacher with, well, three degrees, but 2 of them are in science. So it's targeted right to and directly to your science students. So sign up, subscribe to the channel, and I release lots of videos. Also, in addition to these ones, lots of little short videos that are like 2 minutes long that cover science topics. Those ones you don't get to see my handsome face, but they're still good videos, and they're much more targeted, and those ones are scripted. So you don't have to hear me like you are right now going blah, blah, blah. The end. Subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.